Hello everybody, it's Chibi, and today I am here to bring you an anime review on Code Geass Episode 2. So, this episode of Code Geass, man, that cliffhanger, that's painful. Oh my god. I already can tell that I'm probably gonna hate the cliffhangers from this series. I could straight up tell, because I usually try to watch an episode of Code Geass or any series I review, like an old series, like one episode a week. And I know for a fact these type of cliffhangers are going to bug the shit out of me, because this ending, I know technically what happens, as I said, I've only watched like half of episode 3 or whatever, but still the point of it is that I can already tell you these cliffhangers are going to get pretty freaking nasty, like, oh my god. So, this episode, I did not realize that Lelouch was actually the actual prince of Britannia. I never keyed in on that when I did my live reaction. I never did. Never keyed in that Lelouch was actually a prince that supposedly was confirmed dead, or was supposed to be dead. So, with the ending of this episode, I'm curious and wondering why. Why did everybody think he was dead? Like, why did his, own brother technically think he was dead? Like, was he, I guess a bastard child? I want to take a guess in the shot in the dark, okay? Judging by the way this series is, and judging by how there's a bunch of princes, as we can see, going for the throne and stuff, I'm willing to bet that maybe Lelouch has a different mother or something. Maybe he's a bastard child, because that's what I'm going to think. That's exactly what I'm thinking, why supposedly he was confirmed dead or something. I don't know. But the thing is that Lelouch was hiding in plain sight. So how did they not realize he was alive? That's my big question right now, and why? What happened in the past? I mean, whatever happened in the past, I'm guessing, is what caused Lelouch to want to become a rebel or, go against Britannia. I'm guessing that's the main reason. So, overall, what I find very interesting is that Lelouch, he most likely, as I know for a fact he's probably going to join the Revolutionary Army, because it's obvious, because the title of the series is called Code Geass, Lelouch's Revolution, or whatever. So, kind of obvious, he's going to join the Revolution, but the thing is what makes it so interesting is that he technically is like a king, or a prince, that could be the king of Britannia, so that's really cool. I like that. So you have it to where the Revolutionary Army is actually going to have one of the princes on their side to take over Britannia. I like that so far. So here's the thing, okay? With this episode, some things I keyed in on that I did not key in on when I first watched the series was that how smart Lelouch was. I mean, I knew he was smart, but I never really realized how smart he was until I saw this episode. Lelouch was coming up with tactics. Multiple tactics on the fly, spontaneous tactics. He was just thinking them up instantly, and he was actually looking at this entire war going on in the middle of this town as if it was a chess match. And I'm like, holy shit, he's literally playing, chess. He's envisioning this entire war as a chess battle, and I'm like, it's pretty fucked up. But it also shows you his overall personality, his demeanor, and how he actually can think about different tactics of what he wants his men to do. And as I said in my last review, pretty much Lelouch, as he said at the beginning of the series, is the men will not follow if the king does not move himself. And so I love that. I love that dialogue a lot. Like I said in my last review, that overall little piece of dialogue, I'm willing to bet, has some form of symbolism or foreshadowing later on down the road. I don't know how long down the road, but that definitely has some foreshadowing. And seeing how they're keeping to this chess-type match tactics and, personality trait of Lelouch, it makes me think that we're going to eventually see some form of connection to that dialogue. Now, one more thing I actually do want to cover that a bunch of you Chibits pointed out in my last review. Supposedly said, no, there was not poison in that capsule, it was just that girl. When I was talking about that, I was just talking about it being symbolic. It wasn't really poison. She technically could be considered poison because she gave Lelouch his power, his eye power to control people. And so technically she is poison, because whatever she did, she could have given people this type of power, which would poison the entirety of Britannia. So I wasn't really talking about a literal sense of her really being poisoned. At first it was, but then I started thinking about it as symbolic. So I didn't know if all of you understood where I was going with that in my last review, so I decided to clear that up in this review. I was thinking of more of it as a symbolic meaning. So anyways, besides that, the episode, we get a demonstration of different characters. Like, a different amount of characters are introduced with this episode, especially the revolutionary girl. Like, we get to see more of her, how she's trusting Lelouch in this as if, she, he's like the master or king or whatever, the main general of the army. Like, Lelouch just comes in the middle of this fight, and he's like, you know what? I'm the fucking general of the revolutionaries. That's pretty much what Lelouch did, and I'm like, that's badass. That's just straight up badass. And one thing I want to point out is that his personality, like, with the way he, like, thinks and his smiles and all that, like, dude, the straight up smile of Lelouch at the beginning of this episode, I am loving that shit. I am straight up loving that shit. Like, seriously, when I see a smile like Lelouch, it reminds me of Death Note. For instance, Light. It reminds me of Light smiles and laughs and shit. When I see that shit with Lelouch smiling and all that, I'm like, dude, damn. So, overall, my impressions of the main male character, I'm loving him. I'm just straight out loving the character. I'm loving his personality, I'm loving his intelligence, and I'm also loving his overall way he actually treats, like, his subordinates. So the way he actually thinks he's kind of like, he's above his men. That's actually how he was acting in this. Like, he was acting like he was above the terrorists and stuff. He's like, silly terrorists, they couldn't even do their job properly and stuff like that. So, pretty much, Lelouch kind of is considered an asshole a little bit. But, I mean, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but still, that's my overall impressions of him right now. So, besides that, talking about other aspects of this episode, I want to get into depth with the actual eye ability. Okay, so, I don't know necessarily how the ability of the eye 100% works, but from what we find out in this episode right at the beginning, when that nightmare comes in, that's actual, the frame, whatever it's called Nightmare. When this nightmare mech comes in, and it's about to shoot the shit out of Lelouch, well, he cannot control the person inside of the nightmare. So, Lelouch actually has to make visual eye contact with the person to actually control them. Now, the specifics of this, I don't really understand. For instance, I know for a fact he has to make eye contact to control the person. Now, necessarily, I don't know exactly how far this power really extends to. Like, for instance, does this power only work on civilians? Can it work on people like Lelouch's brother? The thing is, okay, with this, is that I'm really curious. Like, does this eye power affect everybody? Does it? And if it does, then that's interesting. But if it doesn't, I wonder. And also, is there limitations to this power? Like, for instance, can he only use it one time per person? Can he use it as many times as he wants? Because if Lelouch can use this power over and over, he can have, like, a zombie army. Like, seriously, he can have an entire army under his control. He's like, bow before me, my minions. That's pretty much what he could do to, like, 50,000 people, and they all follow him at his command. So, if this power can be repeatedly used against the same person, that would mean that he's a scary, scary son of a bitch. I'm just gonna say that now, like, holy shit. So we'll have to see with that. Overall, a good episode of Code Geass. Loving it. Love the overall music and vibe of this episode. And I love the Lancelot. Actually, one more thing I do want to talk about before I end this review. So, here's my perspective, actually. There's another main character I think that's going to be getting a lot of development in the future. As we know, with the last episode, the first episode of Code Geass, pretty much, you have it where Lelouch is the main male character, as in our eyes. We know he's the main character. But then, you see this other character that was like Lelouch's childhood friend. And he was in the army, that was actually announced in the last episode I watched. So, I'm curious. Is this series going to take a route that maybe Lelouch and this childhood friend is going to be kind of enemies for the course of the series? Because they get in a little bit of a fight in this episode, but they don't actually realize that they were fighting each other. But I'm curious. I'm really curious if the route Code Geass is going to take is going to be similar to Death Note. For instance, like, let's say, L and Light. I wonder if we're going to see, like, similarities of that. We're going to have where, Lelouch is, the commander of the revolutionaries, and then we're going to probably have this dude, the childhood friend of Lelouch, that is going to be probably eventually the commander of, Britannia. I could see something like that happening. I really could. And if it does happen, that'll be really interesting to see both sides of the world, or both sides of the armies pretty much fighting each other, and seeing how these two try to actually have a battle of minds and wits. That is something I really liked about this episode. It actually showcased battle of wits between tacticians and generals fighting each other and trying to overpower each other's tactics. Something like that is what I really enjoy, and that's exactly what this episode did. And so if it continues to go down that path of actually showing tactics and stuff with the characters, I'm gonna fucking love it. I straight up will. So tell me your thoughts in the comments below. How did you feel about this episode of Code Geass if you're watching it alongside me? All of you Chibas have already seen this before. How do you feel about this episode? Please keep the spoilers to a minimum. I do not want to be spoiled for this series. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.